Manchester City are riding high in the Premier League at the moment, and I'm reminded of a sunny evening nearly 2 years ago when an open-top bus containing members of the league-winning team and festooned with flags and scarves and silverware processed through the streets of the city and Deansgate, where I and hundreds more were waiting. It was a joyous occasion. I don't know whether you've ever been part of a crowd waiting by the roadside for someone important to arrive. Very often scenes such as these represent not only excitement for the occasion, but a hope for the future. This Sunday is Palm Sunday, when the church remembers Jesus making his way into the holy city, the way made welcome with palms and cloaks and shouts of hosannas. For those gathered in Jerusalem almost 2,000 years ago, there's a yearning for the one who will release them from Roman occupation, a long, long since promised king for Jerusalem. Blessed is the coming kingdom of our ancestor David. But Jesus knows, and his followers will see very quickly that the mood in the city will change. After the Passover meal, the disciples will lose their nerve, fall asleep, and scatter as Jesus is rushed into an illegal trial. He'll be accused before Pilate of calling himself king, and without a word of protest be crucified under the inscription, "This is the King of the Jews." Cries of "Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord" will seem a distant memory by the end of the week. How quickly things can change. We reflect on our own journey of discipleship in the light of the experience of Peter, James, and John especially. We wouldn't lose our nerve, fall asleep, or scatter, would we? Surely that wouldn't be us. I rather think it would have been if we'd been among the disciples then. So this journey becomes a challenge. It's easy to name Jesus King when things are going well, when we can see results from our work, answers to our prayers, when we are financially solvent and in good health. But how can we ensure that we continue to name him King in wilderness times, or indeed pandemic times, and when life is a struggle? Firstly, I think we need to rely on God's promises. I don't think it's an accident that so soon after his public baptism and heavenly affirmation that Jesus is led into the desert to be tempted. I don't think it's an accident that on the way down the mountain after the event called the Transfiguration, that Peter, James and John start arguing about who will be the greatest in God's kingdom, nor that almost immediately after Jesus' entry into Jerusalem, things begin to go wrong. It's heartening to recognize and to see these highs and lows experienced by Jesus. But it's vital to remember that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and we need to hold on to that. Difficult times aren't what God intended, but he is there, and the first and the last words are and will be God and God with us. This season of spring gives us hope. We've just passed the spring equinox in the Northern Hemisphere, where there is as much light as there is darkness, and in creation, God's creation, there is a season of waiting and for new life. When we celebrate and hold on to the promise of resurrection from death, then we too proclaim the King of creation, the one who comes in the name of the Lord. Second, it's important to stay connected to God and to each other. It's a strange thing. We think we know the story of Holy Week, but the disciples after Palm Sunday are largely quiet through the week until the Last Supper. Then they disperse before regrouping as news of the resurrection is confirmed. We are individuals and we have, each of us, a personal faith, but it's Jesus' intention that we are his disciples in community. I love the crowd scenes right through the Gospels where Jesus is in the midst, and the times when Jesus teaches his disciples, just he and them. Our faith is worked out and lived out in community. That isn't always easy, you know that, and so do I. It's often said of football fans that when supporters of a team fall out with each other, they don't go and support another team, but they just move to different parts of the ground. In other words, the core values keep us together. In communities of faith, a commitment to journeying together no matter what the difficulties. Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord isn't the cry of a lone voice, but of a community worshipping together. And then thirdly, it's important to practice the art of praise and adoration. If we can do that and make it part of what we do and what we are, then even when life is otherwise a struggle, then the opportunity for God to meet us there is opened up. Christian songwriter Matt Redman and his wife Beth famously wrote the song Blessed Be Your Name after visiting churches in New York after the events of 9/11. A song was needed to express lament as well as praise. In their words, the Church of God needs her songs of lament just as much as she needs her songs of victory. Blessed be God's name in the land that is plentiful, when all the streams of abundance flow, when the sun is shining down on the world, when the world is all as it should be. And blessed be God's name too, in the desert places, in the wilderness, in the road marked with suffering, and where there's pain. When we do this, imitating Jesus, then we are naming him as King by our actions as well as our words. When I was in my first year of training for ministry, I was one of the appointed chapel wardens for the college chapel, where we had services twice a day. The duties of the chapel wardens were to unlock and prepare the building, put the books out, the hymn books out, and to prepare the Bible at the place for the reader. And then 10 minutes before each service to set the mechanism for the bell summoning people to worship. There were 2 dials, one to set the time and the other to set the type of chime, whether for a wedding, morning prayer, a funeral toll. One morning, it was my duty that day. I didn't have my glasses on, and in the dark, setting the mechanism, instead of calling the faithful to prayer, I inadvertently declared war. It struck me then, and reminds us now of how easily adoration can turn to opposition, how quickly in that week in Jerusalem shouts of praise become cries of accusation. We must travel conscientiously and deliberately, never losing sight of Jesus. As we journey through Holy Week as pilgrim people, may we continue to confess Jesus as King, remembering God's promise of resurrection hope. Amen.